artificial intelligence will completely transform our world. But what is AI? Why will it affect you? And how can you and your business survive and thrive through the AI revolution? Welcome to AI and You. Here is your host, author, speaker, and futurist, Peter Scott.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 294. I'm going to be talking about the future of work today, and no surprise, don't expect a definitive answer on that subject today because that doesn't exist. In fact, I'll telegraph right now that one of the takeaways from this session will be that there is no consensus on much of what's going to happen, so stop trying to look for it. So we have to put prediction in its place. It can be a bit of a fool's errand. We still need to do some prediction, but the problem or the trap is getting too invested in just prediction because we're never going to be good enough at it. So I'll talk about some of those studies and reports and statistics about what's happening with jobs right now and what may be happening in the future with AI, and then some of the trends that I see and insights that I have into what needs to change or must change about the way that we work in a future of machines that can think. So we love statistics, we love reports, we love studies. What do they tell us? They tell us conflicting stories. For instance, a United Kingdom study modeled scenarios ranging from a full displacement, worst case of 7.9 million jobs lost to AI with no gain in GDP, to a best case where AI augments work with no net job losses and a 13% GDP boost. The variation between those depends on how we manage this transition. Yet another UK study at the Tony Blair Institute envisaged a scenario where 1 to 3 million UK jobs were displaced by AI by 2030. Look at the variation between those predictions. You can't feel any certainty or stability in such an environment. Generative AI is projected to add roughly $7 trillion to global GDP, about a 7% lift over a decade, thanks to productivity gains of about 1.5%, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but 7 trillion is nothing to sneeze at. At the same time, that generative AI could expose 300 million full-time jobs worldwide to automation. Not whole jobs, of course. There are very few examples, and none come to mind at the moment, of where an entire job can be automated by AI, but partial task automation. And this is just straight obvious math. If you've got a company where there are 10 people doing an accounting job and AI comes along and it can automate 60% of that task, well then 6 of those accountants are no longer needed. You just spread the workload over the remaining 4 and have them using AI. All these changes have taken off rapidly in the last year with an explosion in AI uptake across industries. A mid-2024 global survey found 72% of companies now use some form of AI, up from about 50% in prior years. And 65% of organizations report regular use of generative AI tools, nearly double the share from just 10 months earlier. If we look at job cuts that have already happened, we see companies that are unafraid to attribute massive layoffs to AI. In just the last 2 years, for instance, 14,000 plus at Amazon, 15,000 at Verizon, 15,000 at Intel, 13,000 at Dell, 11,000 at Accenture, 9,000 at Microsoft, 8,000 at SAP, and 6,000 at Cisco. And those were all just single announcements. Meta laid off many people over a series of actions. All of those have got to be a serious impact on the market. Now, we should have some skepticism because it's all too easy for a bandwagon to accelerate and people to jump on it. And maybe those companies did that and they'll later regret it and come slinking back to the hiring pool. So what's real about the benefits of AI in the information technology workplace? A survey done by Workday of 3,200 global employees showed AI delivering between 1 and 7 hours of weekly time savings for 85% of the users. Sounds good. But then they said that roughly 40% of those gains disappeared into fixing the AI's errors, rewriting low-quality content, double-checking the output. But that still leaves between 1 and 4 hours of weekly time savings, which is a 10% productivity improvement, right? That's not too shabby. And another survey says that white-collar job losses from AI remain limited because look at the US unemployment rate, it's still 4.4%. But we have to contrast that with Goldman Sachs warning that AI could automate 25% of US work hours, and Elon Musk saying that it's already capable of replacing half of white-collar jobs. This all lands in a very non-uniform way across job markets. According to the World Economic Forum, employers in transportation, logistics, media, and entertainment anticipate above-average job churn in the next 5 years due to automation and algorithms remaking supply chains and content creation, whereas some sectors expect more stability. Surveyed companies foresee lower than average job turnover in industries like manufacturing and retail, which is intriguing given that manufacturing bore the brunt of earlier automation. It suggests that manufacturing may have already automated many routine tasks, and that task automation is a relatively new phenomenon in that scale to white-collar information work. On the other hand, routine clerical and administrative roles are rapidly declining. Think bank tellers, data entry clerks, payroll clerks, cashiers, because many of their tasks can be handled by software or kiosks. Remember when it was such a big deal that McDonald's rolled out the first self-service kiosks at their entrances? It's about this point in many talks that I roll out a graphic where I show two peaks. On one side, we have something labeled the decision class, and on the other side we have something I label the trades. And in between we have information work, and then I show those peaks getting further apart as the information work in between is hollowed out by AI. But the trades, think electricians, plumbers, hairstylists, carpenters, massage therapists, you get the idea. Their work is relatively safe. Now, I can hear you asking, what about robotics? Aren't we primed for a revolution in especially bipedal humanoid robots that can do all those things? No. In a word, we are not that close to that. We would need a breakthrough that would put us at least 3 years away from such a revolution, and that breakthrough hasn't happened yet. If you want to draw an analogy with generative AI, then that breakthrough would be either the 2017 publication of the paper about Transformers called Attention is All You Need, or the 2020 introduction of GPT-1. And there's no sign to me that either of those things have happened in robotics yet. You will see headlines proclaiming that such and such an event is the ChatGPT moment for robotics. And I have not seen one that is worthy of the title. I have seen a whole lot of people very motivated to declare that such a thing has happened because of the sheer amount of money chasing robotics startups. But I still don't have a Roomba that can do stairs, and I have a lot of stairs. And for all the hype and demos of bipedal robots, they would struggle to put a cup in a dishwasher if you moved it from its previous location or changed it to a different kind of cup. Anything significantly more useful, like replacing the P-trap under your sink or swapping out an electrical socket, forget it. So those things are not coming to domestic homes yet, except for people who are very rich who want to do status signaling by having one in the corner that takes people's coats. Even that would be a stretch. All that is not to say that there aren't certain tasks that those robots could be very suited to, like taking packages off an assembly line and loading them into trucks, as long as there's a high amount of repeatability and low amount of variation in the environment where the trucks are parked, how big they are, the size of the packages that go in them. That's something that you could expect with a fair amount of training those robots could handle, and that if you're a major fulfillment operation like Amazon, then that expense and training would be worth it. But there's another side to that graphic that I referred to, which is the decision class. And what do I mean by decision class? People that make decisions. High-level managers, politicians, lawyers, policymakers. You get the idea. People who make the decisions about how we live and what we do. CEOs, upper management, lobbyists. I think you get the idea. Now, some of what they do could be automated. Actually, quite a bit of it could be automated, but it won't be because they make the decisions. That's why I call them the decision class. And they're not about to abrogate that privilege to AI. However, there's a lot of evidence that AI is cutting off the supply chain of new decision class members at the knees. And we've heard on this show in previous episodes about how entry-level positions in surgery and law and software development are being eviscerated by AI because those entry-level positions typically involve rote menial work that carries with it the privilege of being able to observe the senior partners doing their thing and eventually learning how to take over for them. But that rote menial work is easily done by AI and cheaper. So it is being done by AI. Unfortunately, that results in cutting off the supply of apprentices to entering the higher level positions later on. How is this going to be resolved? I don't know. There is little incentive to spend money to solve a problem that won't rear its head for another 5 years or so. By that point, the burden will probably get thrown on MBA schools or the like. Creative jobs have obviously come in for a lot of pressure from AI. Think about generating ads. Say you're making an advertisement for a hamburger. Well, you spend a lot of time setting up the perfect hamburger to take a picture of because you want that ideal one. And the usual way of doing that involves putting together components that have not really any real place or belonging in an actual hamburger. You've got plastic lettuce, you've got hairspray, you've got glue and toothpicks holding things apart, and all of that to create something that looks like what we want to buy in a hamburger, but has little resemblance to what you actually get. But that fantasy burger is what you get by default by asking an image generator to show me a hamburger. So a whole lot of marketing creatives are under pressure now because your mid to lower level clients, not the top level ones like Coca-Cola and so forth, but lesser funded clients can now get advertising of the standard that they're used to much, much cheaper from AI. And in fact, we also saw over the holidays that even Coca-Cola went and generated an ad with AI to some mixed reviews, of course. There has been some pushback from creative types, like the Writers Guild of America won significant concessions for its members in their 2023 strike over the threats from AI. Got a really good deal there. But few creatives are as well organized and unionized as they are. Or their brethren in SAG-AFTRA that won concessions for the use of actors' likenesses by AI. If they hadn't been unionized, then there is no way that the actors at the low end of the pay scale, which is the vast majority of them, would have that kind of protection extended to them. Now, the anti-Luddite narrative, if you will, is that don't worry about jobs being lost to technology because technology will create newer and better jobs. It always has. If it hadn't, we'd still be using children to sweep chimneys. And we are seeing new jobs. In the United States, the share of job postings that mentioned generative AI more than tripled from September 2023 to September 2024. That's not strictly speaking new jobs, because it might be existing ones that generative AI has been tacked as an additional requirement onto. But we are seeing surging demand for tech-heavy jobs like AI and machine learning specialists, data analysts, information security experts, and other digital roles, and some AI-unique jobs like prompt engineer and sustainability jobs like renewable energy engineers that are booming as economies go green in reaction to the narrative about AI and its energy consumption needs. But we can't just exercise a leap of faith that AI is going to create all these extra better jobs. After all, the same people claiming that are generally the same people saying that it is a radically new technology that is having radically new effects. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't at the same time claim that it is revolutionary and all bets are off the table, and simultaneously say that it's going to do what technology has always done in the past. Of course, AI literacy is now seen as an essential skill in the workplace. More so even than computer literacy, I would say, which sounds like a bit of a contradiction because AI is on computers, right? But you can interact with it in ways that don't require any computer skills at all. I'd put it more on a par with the ability to read. So AI literacy is already being linked to compensation and hireability. But the other shoe has not yet dropped in the way that we use AI effectively. We have been using it only to accelerate what we were doing before. So if someone's job in a company was to produce a report on some industry trend, say, and send that up to another layer of management, then now they can use AI to generate that report much, much, much faster and make it much, much, much longer, and thereby create even more of a headache for the people they deliver it to who now have to read it and are probably going to use AI to summarize it for them. Clearly, that's inefficient. Clearly, something is being left out of that process, in addition to some unnecessary things being left into it. And what's being left out is the consideration of what is the function of that report in the first place. Because it's probably to enable that next layer of management to make some kind of decision. A decision that AI is likely eminently suited to making. So why go through the stage of generating the report in the first place? Have the AI that needs to make the decision gather the inputs that would be needed to make the report and do it directly. Cuts out both the possibility of hallucinations and other fluff being introduced into the report that has to be processed away, and also that employee that was writing the report. But at the moment, what we have mostly done with AI is to vastly increase the amount of content that we need to process, with or without AI. So I say that we haven't yet approached the future of content generation and how it's going to happen with AI. Of course, this podcast is content too, so I'm only too well aware of the possibility that eventually even what I'm doing here will be rendered irrelevant, but it's one of the things I love doing the most, so I'm going to keep doing it anyway. It gives me the opportunity and privilege to talk with the wonderful people that you've heard on this show week after week, giving me and you a quality of insights into our future with AI that I find irreplaceable. So when do we get the benefit to our work practices that AI should be delivering? Who's experiencing an easier, less stressful, less overwhelmed, deadline-filled workplace? Or are you seeing even more pressure to learn the latest AI models and to react to those models' outputs at their speed, not yours? When does AI return a benefit in time savings? We keep getting promised this, but it's always jam yesterday, jam tomorrow, but never jam today. This has been going on for so long that I call BS on the predictions that AI is going to launch us into an era of stress-free time abundance. That prediction beloved by many pundits, not because AI is incapable of doing that, but because our psychology collectively keeps driving us to perpetuate systems that only increase the expectations on how much we work. And this was a major theme of my second TEDx talk. No surprise that a survey of 41 advanced countries conducted by the Organization for Better Economic Cooperation and Development found that the United States ranked 29th when it came to work-life balance. It also found that 10% of US residents worked 50 hours or more a week on average. So the big challenge ahead of us is to figure out the match between us and AI. How do we use it? I have likened this to putting on a glove, only it's more like a glove with about 10,000 fingers. The more fingers that we put into the right holes in that glove, the better the way that we use AI will be. But that figurative glove has that many fingers because the right way to use AI is not in these binary ways of generate the final product that people focus so much on. Here, write me a paper on this. And it will come out looking great to a first approximation, but for real work, that's often not good enough. The real work usually needs to take place with much more careful prompting and an interplay between us and AI through all the stages of generating whatever it is that we are supposed to generate, from ideation through editing, at each stage using AI differently. So finding where we are best suited to producing some result and where AI is best suited to doing that involves this very complex set of constraints that we have barely started to figure out. Meanwhile, we're inundating ourselves in content. I get regular now AI podcast guest solicitation spam, which means I get a huge amount of useless pitches as people who are looking to guest on a podcast can now spam literally every podcast with customized text. So I have seen this huge uptick in emails that generally follow the pattern of 4 paragraphs that start with, I truly enjoyed insert title of episode here with insert title of guest here. The discussion around insert content here made me think of, I can't keep doing this, blah, blah, blah. And then it introduces the potential guest and then goes on to say, and that's why I believe your listeners would benefit from hearing from so-and-so who revolutionized pet food supply chain management. Now, I was rejecting over 90% of the pitches that I got before this AI-generated wave started, and now it's far worse. Took me a while to realize that it was AI, but it's obviously clear now. And I'm just round filing them. I would issue a rejection in person to the pitches that I was rejecting when they came from a human being, but if I'm being emailed by an AI, I see no obligation to respond. This is insulting, and it only makes it harder for real potential guests to get through. For the record, about 9 out of 10 on the guests on this show are ones that I reached out to, having decided what's important for me and you to learn about, and then going out looking for it. In fact, what I just described, that spam showed up a few months earlier, before that, in another form, where I was getting emails that started out complimenting me on some LinkedIn post that I'd written. After I sussed out that there was a formula and AI at work, and I wrote a LinkedIn post exposing it and decrying the practice that was resulting in this spam on me, I started getting emails complimenting me for that post. This is AI slop at its sloppiest. To wrap this up, of course, AI has the potential to revolutionize how we learn and work. It could deliver to us the utopian forecast that those pundits I mentioned earlier regularly give us. But getting there is going to require that we acknowledge and tame the demons that we have as a society around the nature of work and our communication with each other. The ways that we incentivize learning and work are not well suited to the new AI era. We all have a lot to do in being intentional about creating that future. Of course, we'll be revisiting these themes many times over episodes to come. In today's news, ripped from the headlines about AI, researchers at use.ai published survey results showing that 48% of single adult respondents reported using AI to draft breakup messages or boundary-setting texts. Among those who used AI tools, such as, of course, use.ai, that's their reason for making the study, to let their dates down gently, 62% described the resulting conversations as more structured. I assume that's a good thing. And 39% noted fewer follow-up conflicts. On the other hand, 17% expressed concern that AI might encourage overly formulaic communication. But on the other hand, only 17%? Next week, my guest will be Maya Ackerman, author of the new book, Creative Machines, AI, Art, and Us. That's next week on AI and You. Until then, remember, no matter how much computers learn how to do, it's how we come together as humans that matters.
That's all for this episode of AI and You. please leave a rating and comment and share with your friends. Get the book Artificial Intelligence and You and see more videos and articles at aiandyou.net. That's aiandyou.net, where you can also send us your questions. Thank you for listening.